For some reason, beat 'em ups seem to be absolutely rife with co-op experiences. Whether it be something more strategic like Warhammer Chaos Bane or a classic party bash like Castle Crashers, there's lots to choose from in this field. When it comes to big helmet heroes, this game is extremely familiar, almost to a fault. However, there is fun to be had with this one, especially if you're after a simple and casual co-op experience without too much depth. As a solo play though, it's hard to recommend this one. In its simplest form, Big Helmet Heroes feels like a mashup of the aforementioned Castle Crashers and PlayStation darling Little Big Planet, leaning into chaotic energy and fun. Simple gameplay rather than any sort of tactical play or high-stakes teamwork. Each of the missions see you take control of chosen heroes and then fighting off a whole horde of baddies from left to right until you reach the finish line. The colorful, vibrant worlds have a lot going on, with a good deal of destructible objects, as long as they're on the main path, and plenty of enemies to fight off. The enemy AI is pretty poor though, even on the higher difficulty levels, and these goons will routinely step into traps if they're in their line of sight or get stuck on obstacles trying to reach you. At one point, I had 3 waves of enemies to fight, and unfortunately, this took way longer than needed because a couple of archers got stuck behind a tree, just out of my line of sight. There are moments like this throughout, and the enemies largely stick to either ranged, melee or heavy grunts with all the usual little variations you'd expect. There are suicide bombers, ranged fighters with crossbows, and even enemies that will throw dynamite or bombs your way. These are usually grabbed within the plethora of weapons dotted around the landscape, which are suitably bonkers throughout. Whether it be an electrified fly swatter or a flaming marshmallow on a stick, these crazy and varied weapons do a good job of keeping things fresh, even when the gameplay tends to stagnate. The one standout part here stems from the boss fights, which are generally well designed, even if the bosses themselves adopt very obvious wind-ups and attack patterns. The gameplay sees a combination of simple attacks, a couple of different combos, and a special move. There's also dodge rolling for good measure. The special moves are a bit of a mixed bag, with different heroes' abilities ranging from utterly useless to completely overpowered to the point of effortlessly blasting through goons, even on the hardest difficulty. There's also no way of breaking up your special move mid-attack, so if you've wiped out all the goons, you still need to sit and wait for the animation to finish before proceeding. There's no way of leveling up your characters either, beyond gaining bonus care packages in-game by collecting pink flowers dropped by enemies within levels. This will see a box drop from the sky, giving you a new weapon, a vial to power up your special move, or an apple to replenish health. These apples are dotted across the levels anyway, offering up an easy way of replenishing lost HP. It's also worth noting that if you're playing single player, switching characters and giving your other hero a rest will also do the job to help raise their HP too. Along the way, each mission tends to have unlockable heroes to grab, trapped inside gold cages. Some are quite easy to find, but others require you to explore the environment, destroying rubble to unveil hidden paths, or even entering waterfalls to find secrets as an example. Unfortunately, beyond the added bonus of unlocking extra heroes, there isn't really a lot else here that leans into replayability. The story is wafer-thin and designed to drive the game from one set piece to the next. Meanwhile, the heroes you unlock are a nice varied bunch, but many of them simply tweak core aspects of your main ensemble of heroes rather than drastically changing the gameplay. The only exception here are the special moves, but again some heroes have vastly more powerful and useful power-ups than others, so you'll likely find your favorite early on and stick with them throughout. Thankfully, where the game does stand out is with its level design. It's clear the developers have made a clear push to make sure the game doesn't stagnate and become too samey by mixing up the viewpoint to include side-scrolling sections or even top-down mazes to try and freshen things up. It's certainly admirable, but the camera work definitely needs some work when it comes to co-op action. It's not a deal-breaker, but definitely something worth bearing in mind. In terms of performance issues, I personally didn't experience any beyond a few graphical glitches and poor pathfinding with enemies, but there have been reported issues for those on PS5. I can imagine during some of the later missions when enemies are flung on screen with reckless abandon, and there's a lot going on, things may slow down a bit. Cutesy aesthetics and a fun co-op experience aside, a game like this can live or dies by its replayability. With such simple missions and even simpler gameplay, it's disappointing not to see more incentive for audiences to keep playing when the final credits roll. Leveling heroes, skill switching, or even if create a hero mode would have helped this one out tremendously, but instead what we get is a rather basic and simple beat 'em up. Big Helmet Heroes is undoubtedly fun, especially with the plethora of weapons available, but it's very much your run-of-the-mill experience rather than an outstanding offering in the field.